Now we're going to talk about the cell danger response. This response, or this biological response, was discovered and named by Dr. Robert Navio at UCSD. And what he saw and what he explained is happening predominantly at the cellular level, with a lot of action happening in and around your mitochondria. Our mitochondria, as we were originally taught, are where we produce energy inside of our cells. But now the word has gotten out finally that these organelles are way more than energy producing. And they are, in fact, they act more like sensors, where they are sensing our environment and responding, telling the cells, telling the factories that are inside your cell what to do, because that input, as we've talked about so many times, is incredibly important. We are dynamic beings. We are in constant feedback with our environment. I like the analogy of the canary in the coal mine, that the mitochondria act like the canary in the coal mine. They are sensing very carefully what is going on around them. So billions of years ago, the mitochondria were their own bacteria on the planet. So they had to have the ability to sense danger. They were sensitive to light, to darkness, and to seasons. They even had to know what time it was. So now we're just coming back to the understanding that that ancient knowledge is still inside all of us in high amounts, because we have mitochondria in all of our cells except for our red blood cells. So what does that mean in regards to something called the cell danger response? It's a very important thing for all of you to understand, because we tend, as a society, especially here in the US, to try and force healing. We're listening to the greatest next thing, the peptide, the stem cell, the cold plunge, whatever everyone else is talking about, to be the magic answer for our healing. And then we get super frustrated. And worse, we gaslight ourselves to think we're not good enough because maybe we couldn't achieve the same level of results that our best friend, our partner, our colleague at work was able to get with that same plan. And I want you to understand that it is not you. It's more important as to understand is that depending on what state your particular biology is in at that moment determines how you're likely to respond to all of these exciting new modalities. So let's talk about this cell danger response and what does it mean for you. And essentially, understand first that your body is not broken. It's just likely stuck in a particular protective phase. When we get exposed to a threat, and that could be everything from processed toxins in food that we're eating, all the way to a fight with your boss, all the way to, a infection you didn't know you had. When we have that particular threat going on, we may or may not be consciously aware of it, but our little sleuth mitochondria, who are the canary in the coal mine, they sure are. So what happens is the body goes through a protective set of processes. It knows, and the easiest example is to talk about, let's say, a virus. Let's say you got exposed to a virus. Everyone was sick. You got exposed to it. Your cell says, wow, we got exposed to something. We need to shut down and not expose our neighbors. Because the organism that is you, knows to protect the other cells. So immediate first response, which is the cell danger response number 1, is protection mode. And what happens is your cell shuts down, and even your mitochondria, where your cell membranes, which are the area that is made out of lipids that surrounds your cells and surrounds your mitochondria, those cell membranes become impermeable, stiff. They stop communicating. So if you think of an analogy of the dynamic mitochondria, they actually change shapes to a meatball or spaghetti picture. And what that means is just like it sounds. If your mitochondria is healthy, it looks more like spaghetti. It's stretched out. It's talking to its neighbor. It's sharing resources. That's just like we are in community. But if we are exposed to something toxic, stressful, we shut down. We turn into more a shape that looks like a meatball or a fetal position, if you think about it. So that is one of the main things that you see in CDR1 is protection mode, shutdown, impermeable membranes. And if people try to push outside of that CDR1 with things that cause more stress, let's say it's cold plunge or extreme fasting or many things that I hear every day from my patients that they want to do or try or they are doing or trying, frankly, even pushing a lot of the mitochondrial support like IV NAD and these types of modalities at a time when the cell is in shutdown, not only are you likely to be wasting time, energy, and money, but it's also likely that you are causing more harm. That's what I want you to understand. There's not always a quick and easy hack. The body is a dynamic, beautiful system. It needs to be honored in that way. It needs grace. So if you are in CDR1, and we are currently working on different ways to tell you whether or not you are in CDR1, what stage you're in. There are certain tests that we'll get into other videos about. There are ways to just measure your own nervous system responses. And many of you know, I'm stressed, I can't control my nervous system, I feel anxious even when I shouldn't be. Those are good signs that your body is sensing a stressor of some sort. So even if you can't figure out what that stressor is right now, honoring it, and we take reclaim, which is the first phase that I walk everybody through to honor that, and then we're going to walk through the parts of reclaiming that are important. So that's what we do with CDR1. As you start getting better, getting control of your nervous system, your foundations, your day-to-day habits, we calm down the backup systems that were overactive while you're in protection. That gives your body the signal that you can move into the next pillar, which for me and my programs is healing. That's more of a classic functional medicine approach where we get into your gut and infections and toxins. That CDR2 is the healing process where the body now says, okay, we're ready to clean up this mess. We got the virus contained. Bring in the immune guns, bring in everything that's going to come in and get us back to some level of baseline. So that's healing, that's CDR2, which is you go from protection to repair. It's the repair phase of this journey. CDR1 can be thought of as protection, shutdown protection. CDR2 can be thought of as repair. So that is healing. There's a lot going on in CDR2. And then as you get the system healed, that's when you go into restore, where you're restoring optimal function. You're restoring cell-to-cell communication, like reestablishing the spaghetti that you can start helping each other, that the guardrails are up, that the system can work more dynamically all together. And for my program, I call that optimize or performing. And then I believe there is a CDR4 or a phase beyond 3, where we enter transcendence, quantum, really progressive sovereignty, where we can access spiritual realms, energetic realms that are unknown in terms of traditional science as far as what they do to our bodies cellularly. There are researchers like Dr. Joe Dispenza and others who are looking at what happens when we hit beyond this CDR3, when we hit into this unknown realm of transcendence. And it's really exciting about the potential of what could happen when you're at that phase. And to pull in my sort of spiral analogy, I love the analogy of the spiral because you can go back. We're constantly getting exposed to things that may bring us back into protection. The body's meant to be dynamic. So just because you tasted, let's say, manifestation and sovereignty and performance at the highest level at the gym, it doesn't mean you're not likely to have something come on board that may bring you back to that center, which can be a stable center that you just need to work through the steps again. And remember, each time with the spiral, if you're working through the steps again, it's likely from a higher, better perspective, where you have more knowledge, where you have more resilience, where you have more skills that allow you to navigate moving through these phases in a more empowered way. So I hope that helps to explain. Remember, CDR1 is protection mode. It's kind of like the meatball, things shut down. In that phase, we want to work on reclaiming. We want to reclaim especially our nervous system. CDR2 is where we start with healing and repair. And that's where we walk through lots of things like infections and toxins and the gut and other exposures, and how do we bring ourselves metabolically back to baseline. And then CDR3, which is let's restore cell-to-cell communication, the highest level of function that our body can do. And then whatever we're going to call the step beyond CDR3, whether it's transcendence or accessing the quantum or our progressive sovereignty, that's where things get really exciting. There's science happening in that aspect all the time. But remember, if you really want to access the joy and the excitement that's happening beyond, don't be scared of having to come back to the center. And that center, you can choose it. You can choose it in an empowered way, or you can be literally dragged kicking and screaming in a chaotic way. And many times when you've had these skills and you've gone on the spiral, when you go back to the center, which is what happened to me recently with a diagnosis that came out of nowhere, I believe, because I had explored outer realms of this spiral, that I was able to go back to the center. Yes, it was chaotic. Yes, it was unknown. But I was able to sit there in a more stable way, knowing, okay, we're back here in this somewhat survival, but mostly stable place. I can choose surrender over survival. I can surrender into the process, expanding back into the spiral, knowing that I would work through these steps of the CDR, of reclaim, healing, that I would optimize and eventually get right back into transcending. So I am so happy to have you here with me on this journey, knowing that we are mobile, fluid, dynamic, and that's the beauty that makes us human. So let's keep studying together, and I send you all the best wishes for navigating this journey.